Welcome to episode 3 of Animation Rotation. Once again, I'm Vorp.
And I'm Eagle.
And today we watched episode 2 of The Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat. The episode title is The Sludge King and Mars Needs Felix. The Sludge King was actually a two-parter, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it was maybe the strongest episode so far.
So far, yeah. One joke made it.
There was one joke that killed us, and it was a stupid joke. It was a really, really dumb joke, but it was just executed so well that Eagle and I were fucking dying. So this episode introduces Felix's magic bag, which is something from the 1960s Felix cartoons.
I watched those episodes on Netflix years ago. I don't know if they're still on, though.
They probably are. I think DreamWorks owns Felix the Cat now, and DreamWorks has, like, everything on Netflix.
Ah.
I did a little bit of digging between the last episode and now, looking into the production on this show, and apparently Joe Oriolo, or is it Joe or is it Don? Don Oriolo, I'm sorry. Joe Oriolo was the one who directed the 60s shorts. Don Oriolo is his son, and as we said last episode, he is the current IP holder of Felix the Cat, and he produced this show. And apparently he was kind of at odds with a lot of the creative staff throughout a lot of the production. He kept insisting that they incorporate stuff from the 1960s Felix cartoons, because, you know, those are the ones his dad made. He wanted to pay homage to that.
The first episode, I definitely did notice a big lack of, like, things that I remembered from Felix. Mm-hmm. I personally remembered the magic bag, and I remembered the professors. Especially not seeing the magic bag, it feels like such a staple thing for Felix, you know?
Ever since the 60s cartoons, that's kind of been Felix's thing. But, like, a lot of the writers and the artists who worked on the show really wanted to veer more towards the silent era Felix shorts. So they kind of resented their boss telling them to incorporate all this stuff in these cartoons that they didn't particularly care about. Apparently, that led to a lot of infighting as the show went on. The producer and the creative staff wanted two very different things from the show. But this episode marks the first time that we actually see something from those 60 shorts. Felix is doing some shadow puppets, and his magic bag is helping out.
I didn't even notice that it was his magic bag doing that.
Was it? His magic bag comes out at some point.
It comes out at some point. I don't remember if it's the light for the shadow puppets, but I remember it comes out like right when he notices the animation studio. So,
like with the last episode, the crux of this plot is Felix is hungry and Felix is trying to get money for eats. So he's putting on these shadow puppets, and there's this obnoxious little kid. He's like doing this really impressive shadow puppet of like a woman, and this kid's like, "Hey, mister, is that a bunny, mister? That's a really weird looking bunny. Is that a doggy, mister? That's a really weird looking doggy if that's a doggy, mister."
You're annoying me.
And Felix just kind of shoves him away. It's then that we see a pair of buxom looking legs. Who is it that was catcalling the legs?
It was a little mouse.
That's right, a little mousey.
He does the cartoon eyes bug out, ooga, ooga, falls into the sewer.
And soon enough, Felix lays his eyes upon what is revealed to be a tall, buxom cat lady, who we find out is named Candy. And he follows her into an animation studio. And Felix just sort of snoops around the animation studio, just trying not to be seen.
To be fair, not a whole lot happens at the animation studio. It's there for the gags.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the little mouse from earlier shows up again, and he trips up Felix, and he falls into like a puddle of ink. And then the mouse takes a little animation cell and splatters it on his face, and then he says, "Hey, original, one-of-a-kind Felix the Cat animation cell!" Felix eventually wanders into this hallway, and he hears some cackling from behind a closed door.
And there's this guy sitting at a desk, presumably animating, laughing to himself. "Oh, this is the funniest gag I've ever animated yet, haha."
You just hear this nasty, wet fart sound.
I definitely have dirtied my pants.
It's a good thing I keep spare pants in the office. And he just wanders out of the room to find a clean pair of pants to replace the ones he just shat in.
The funniest part of it is that it's not even like... It's not like it's a small, like, oh, did he? It's straight up like, oh, yes, he absolutely 100% shit himself and is going to get more pants because this is a regular occurrence.
This is a regular thing in the workplace. That he just laughs so hard that he shits himself. So he has backup pants as a precaution.
They could do anything to get him out of that room. It's animation. They can do literally anything. They can make up any reason. But the way they executed it was just so perfect. Where he's too busy animating and laughing at his own joke that he shit himself.
Eagle and I were dying at this juvenile shit joke. We couldn't stop laughing.
We get like 3/4 of the episode and we start laughing. And you're like, you're thinking about the shit, aren't you? I'm like, yeah.
The reason the writers needed him to shit himself was to get him out of the room so that Felix could snoop in and see what he was cackling at. He goes in and he sees that he was animating on a computer.
He was animating a 3D animation, and Felix is just kind of like, I don't get it.
He's like, what's all the big deal with 3D animation? And it's an animation of Felix, strangely enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the same animations they use in the intro during that weird, out-of-place 3D bit.
It is.
In the animation, Felix falls into a hole, and then he gets apprehended by a strange, large man who says he's going to eat him. And Felix doesn't stick around to watch the rest of the animation because he's interrupted by his friend Roscoe.
Yeah.
Roscoe is a new character, I believe, that they invented for the show. He's Felix's best friend.
I would not know. When he said, Roscoe, hey, like they knew each other, I was like, oh, is this something I just didn't know?
Yeah, you assume it's like a character from the old shorts, but I believe he's original to this.
So, Felix is like, Roscoe, hey, what are you doing here? What am I doing here?
I think I was gonna meet someone, but he can't remember who. And that's Roscoe's whole personality. He's kind of dim. They leave the animation studio, and first Roscoe whips out a jelly donut from his pocket, as you do, and he starts noshing on that. And then it's revealed that the cat lady...
Candy.
Yeah, Candy is Roscoe's sister, and Roscoe was at the animation studio to meet Candy for lunch. She says, oh, would you like to invite... I'm sorry, no, she's a Southern Belle. Would you like to invite your friend Felix for lunch with us? And he says, oh no, Felix wouldn't want to come. He's here waiting for someone.
Felix is like, no.
He elbows him and then knocks the jelly donut out of his hand.
My donut.
And so Felix says, no, I'd love to come with lunch for you. And he's like, oh, that's great. We'll go have a lovely lunch. But first I'd better get this jelly donut.
You're not supposed to let him wander.
So he starts trailing after this jelly donut that's just rolling along. And it eventually falls into the sewer. He looks to where the donut fell, and then a great big slimy hand emerges from the sewer grate and grabs Roscoe and pulls him in.
And Kenny's like, Roscoe! So that begins part 2.
Felix, being the hero of the story, offers to go in and get Roscoe, but he too is apprehended by these strange slimy hands, which it is revealed are the minions of the titular Sludge King. So the Sludge King reveals that he intends to eat Felix and Roscoe, but Felix obviously is having none of that.
He says, I've seen this before, that animation, but I didn't see the end of it. So he reaches into the screen, like one of those cursed images you see on Twitter where they reach into the
It's
screen.
exactly like that.
He reaches into the screen, grabs the TV remote from a 50s family, and they go, Mom, Dad, Felix just took the television remote.
Mm-hmm. It's stock footage of this Leave It to Beaver-ass black and white family.
It must be one of them interactive things. So Felix takes the TV remote, rewinds the episode back to watch the animation and see how it ends, to see how he stops the Sludge King, and then forwards back and gets his magic bag.
He gets his magic bag to free himself from the cell he's been put in, and the Sludge King has been just, holding Roscoe over his mouth this entire time, and Roscoe's taking it on the chin. He's just like, I guess I'll see you in there, Felix. He's totally chill with it.
Mm-hmm. And the whole time that he has Roscoe over his mouth, his minions are also feeding him grog. He's
been drinking sewer grog this entire time, which I feel like isn't something you'd be able to do in a kid's cartoon now, because grog is alcohol. I mean, granted, I have a feeling this isn't exactly the purest grog in the world. It's probably closer to Jenkum.
It's a good thing I brought spares.
So he's been guzzling Jenkum, and Felix tells him, wouldn't you want some more grog? He's like, yes, I would. That's an excellent idea. So he has his minions feed him more and more grog, and now he's just totally bloated with the stuff.
So Felix pulls a porta potty out of his magic bag, and tells the Sludge King, "Hey, do you need to use this, do ya? It's got a throne and everything, fit for a king."
No, I don't gotta go. It's like, you sure? It's got a nice kingly sink with warm running water, and then you hear his stomach gurgling, and he's like, "Oh!" And he runs into the porta potty, and then...
So you'd expect there to be, like, some kind of joke there. You'd expect there to be some kind of, like, and then he does something to the porta potty, like he crushes it with a hammer or something. He just knocks it over.
And it's so quick. It's like 3 frames of him pushing it, and then he just bolts. And you just hear the Sludge King going, "No!"
You hear him go, "Ah!"
As he presumably gets shit all over himself. So Felix grabs Roscoe and makes a run for it. He turns his bag into like a pair of jet skis, and then the Sludge King emerges from the toppled porta potty and just like liquid shit sloshing out of it. There's a lot of shit in this episode.
There is.
So they give chase.
They chase them through the tunnels of the sewer until eventually Felix and Roscoe lose the Sludge King's minions and emerge back on the surface, to where Felix and Roscoe are welcomed back by Candy, and Candy gives Felix a smooch for being the hero. And when he thinks, "Oh, I've got the girl," we see off in the distance, "Hey, baby." It's the guy who shit his pants.
Yup, it's the schlubby animation studio guy who shit himself, and he's got like this nice, like, expensive car.
And he goes, "Hey, baby, you ready to go home?" And Candy's like, "Oh, yes." She walks into the car and they start smooching and drive off.
She probably has shit all over her lips now after kissing Felix, who just spends an afternoon in the sewer, but granted, she might be used to that. given her choice of partner.
Good thing I brought spared.
Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention, the Sludge King's minions, in addition to the little sludge guys, there are also these rats in the sewer, and I really like their design, because they're, like, obviously a pastiche on Mickey Mouse. Like, they have the black circular Mickey Mouse ears, but they're all, like, gnarled.
And they have the red shorts.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was a funny bit. Another funny bit I forgot to mention, when Felix is telling Roscoe about how amazing she was, one of his descriptors is, he says she has eyes like pies, and I thought, like, oh, that was a cute little meta gag. So that was the first 2 segments of this. Do you want to give a rating to this one? The whole 2-parter?
I give this 8 spare pants out of 10. I super dig the episode. The gags were all really funny. But, to be super honest, there isn't a whole lot that happens outside of the gags, and there doesn't really need to be, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing that happens, and when we get to the next episode, we'll talk about it, but there's just a lot going on in the second episode.
That's very true. The second episode, despite being half as long, feels like it has just as much, maybe even more stuff going on. It feels like because they had 2 parts to work with, they kind of spaced it out a lot more. So as a result, there's a lot more, like, downtime.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really funny. I thought the gags were really strong overall. I thought, I'd probably agree with that. I'd give it an 8. Very solid episode overall. Yeah. I'd maybe even give it a 9 just because of how hard that stupid pants shitting gag made us laugh.
I just wasn't expecting for them to go straight up like, "Oh, I shit myself."
Exactly, that's the thing, because it's like, you expect gags like that from a cartoon of this era. You know, obviously Ren and Stimpy was sort of the trendsetter, and all these other cartoons were capitalizing on it, but they very rarely just straight up have a character just out and say, "Oops, I soiled my pants."
He doesn't rush out in like a panic. This is such like an occurrence that just happens. He calmly walks out of the room like, "Good thing I got spares at the other office."
He's so nonchalant about shitting his pants during work hours. So the third segment is a 1-parter called Mars Needs Felix, and this one was directed by Milton Knight, who's a lovely, lovely fellow, most famous for designing the Robotnik design from The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh.
Mars Needs Felix was another really, really strong episode, I thought.
A lot of visual gags.
A lot of visual gags. It felt much closer to, like, the first batch of episodes than the Sludge King did.
Yeah.
Insofar as it's just abject nonsense from start to finish.
It feels like a 30s cartoon with all the nonsense going on.
It really does, and it would have felt more like a 30s cartoon were it not for the really obvious ADR throughout, which we'll get to. So the episode starts out with, once again, Felix pining for food. He sees these rotisserie chickens sitting on one of those, like, 7-Eleven heaters that they turn on. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of anthropomorphized, so they're, like...
They're taunting him.
They, like, shake their asses at him, and they stick a little tongue out of their neck hole to, like, give him a raspberry. And Felix, he's so hungry that, like, jaws form out of his belly, and they start, like, barking like a dog, and he has to whip them to stop.
He notices a poster on the side of a building that says travel the world for free, including eats.
It's like a travel agency.
And he just sees the word free eats and is all on. He's ready to go.
Yep. So he bolts into this travel agency, and then we see a gross alien tentacle thing inside the travel agency putting on human skin.
Putting on a costume, putting on the pants and everything, and when he forms into that human-shaped form, he's animated very well.
He's animated so well. I love the animation on this guy.
It's a shame that he only showed up for, like, maybe 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm. When Felix comes in, he gets his head real close to the camera while his body's, like, in the background. The animation on that one shot was, like, so much more lavish than everything else in the episode. It's really, really well done.
Throughout both episodes, I'd say that was probably, like, the best animated shot in, like, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. He has this really, like, nasty, gnarled face. It's real good.
So, Felix sits down, and the alien in the costume runs off into the other room where his costume just starts falling apart. And he pulls this big lever on the wall, and the agency comes apart, and it turns out to be an alien spaceship that takes Felix away.
As it's careening towards Mars, you see the Earth, like a little hand comes out, and he's, like, waving Felix goodbye with a tissue. And then a little face forms on the moon, and he says, "Well, you wanted to see the world, didn't you?" And you see, like, a little neon sign that just says, "Ha ha ha," behind the moon.
And Felix does the scream.
He does lay Felix scream. So they land on Mars, and it's revealed that this agency has been kidnapping people from Earth, specifically non-humans from Earth, because they need them to manufacture goods, because they sing a little song, a little Wizard of Oz style Lollipop Guild song about how all of Mars's products are made from slave labor, but at least they're not human slave labor.
Mm-hmm. So Felix pops out of this big factory building that they land in. They land in one of the chimneys of a factory building, and Felix, like, pops out, conks his head on the floor, and then is dropped into a uniform.
I really like that gag, because it's like the little leader of the Martian Lollipop Guild, like, holds out a little costume, and you expect Felix to, like, fall into the costume and then, you know, be in it like you do. But no, he lands, like, right next to the costume, clonks his head on the ground, and then bounces up and then falls into the costume. It's a good little subversion.
So they hand him a little bag and say, "All right, get to work." And Felix immediately beats the shit out of the first guy.
Yep. He takes the bag that he was handed, and he shoves the guy into it, and then kicks him, and like a bowling ball, he rolls into all the other little Martians and knocks them down like pins.
And then there's this huge chase, and that's kind of where the episode takes, like, for the rest of the episode, it's basically a chase of Felix running from these Martians and running into more Martians.
And throughout a lot of this, as I mentioned, there's some really, really obvious ADR, where, like, Felix's lips aren't moving or anything, but it'll just be like, "Oh, I hate Mars! I gotta get off of Mars! This place stinks!" Milton Knight actually tweeted about this recently. He said that during production, they would storyboard these episodes, they would send them off to, you know, be animated, and then they would come back, and then the, like, higher-ups would insist on touching them up and adding more lines of dialogue, and the creatives are like, "No, that's the whole point. Like, Felix is a silent cartoon character. We don't want him to talk all the time."
But it's the 90s. He's got to talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously that's not what the higher-ups wanted. So the ADR is especially noticeable in this one because it's constant.
So Felix is running from these Martians, and at some point falls into Mars.
Because Mars has a face, and he falls into Mars's nose.
And falls into the center of Mars, where there's a bar where they're serving babies bottles.
Mm-hmm. And all the staff are, like, these miserable-looking old people. One of the babies, like... One of the babies takes the bottle from the server, and then after drinking it, like, his face is covered in milk, so he rips off the server's beard and uses it like a napkin, and then the server just immediately grows a new beard.
It whoops back onto his face. All at once, just whoosh.
Just in like 2 frames, just boom, new beard.
And Felix having food on his mind, that's the whole reason this adventure started, was because of food. He goes, oh boy, eats!
And so he sets his eyes on a fish with a human face that's just on a ledge somewhere.
And another baby's eating spaghetti with a fork and notices Felix's tail, starts winding around his fork like spaghetti and takes a big chomp. And Felix is like, ah, ooh, ah, ooh. To which the baby's like, yo, that was pretty good.
All of the babies are now alerted, and they all want a bite of Felix.
So now Felix is running from hungry babies.
So he bolts out of the center of Mars, and all the babies come with him. And then there's the little Mars Lollipop Guild, who are also still after him. Oh, and we skipped over a bit, where when he was first being chased, there's this really funny gag where he masquerades himself as, like, a splotch on this cow's hide.
Like a spot on a cow.
He says, oh, this looks like a good spot to hide. They miss him. So then he, unfurls himself, but then he takes all the cow's hide with him. And so then the cow is just left naked with, like, a bra and panties.
And it's just like, oh! And it screams and creates a siren for the Martians to come back and be like, oh, there he is.
Mm-hmm. So Felix is now on the run from both the ravenous babies and the Martian workforce. And then he also manages to catch the attention of this weird giant bird.
That also wants a bite of Felix.
Yeah, everyone wants to eat Felix. Those are the 2 running themes so far, is that people want to eat Felix, and Felix wants to eat. So he's on the run from this group, and eventually he finds the nose hole again, and he tricks the giant bird into running into the nose hole.
And then plugs it up.
And then all these feathers start shooting out, and Mars sneezes. And everyone just gets catapulted into space, and eventually Felix and the bird land on the moon. I assume Mars's moon. Does Mars have multiple moons?
Mars has 2 moons, actually.
That's right, Mars has 2 moons.
The more you know.
So they land on one of Mars's moons, only this one's like a little crescent moon, like the DreamWorks logo moon.
The bird shows up, and Felix is holding onto the moon, and the bird's trying to fly away, and that spins the moon around faster and faster and faster and faster. And eventually the moon stops spinning, and the bird kind of is gone. And from out of nowhere, from the sky, down comes a cooked rotisserie chicken.
Yup, the bird has been roasted.
And Felix is like, oh boy, eats!
Mm-hmm. So he starts to chow down, but then he realizes that the moon looks kind of upset, so he hands one of the drumsticks to the moon.
Which then becomes like a canoe, which he canoes back to Earth.
Again, that sounds like a lot more happened than in the 2-parter, but it was just, like, really, really super compact. Just, like, one gag after the other, after the other, after the other, which I feel like is kind of when this show is at its strongest, when it is just rapid fire.
When there is no downtime, when it just keeps hitting you and hitting you and hitting you.
So, what would you give this episode, Eagle?
That is a toughie. I think, honestly, I would probably still give this an 8, maybe a 9. Like, it's very solid. There's a lot more happening in this episode than in the first episode, which I think is a plus. More things hitting you, like, over and over and over and over is definitely the higher point of this episode. But since there's so many things hitting you over and over and over and over again, there's no, like, big laughs. Something will catch you, and then immediately it goes on to the next thing. You know?
Mm-hmm. It's like you don't even really have time to process any of the gags.
Mm-hmm. Whereas in the first episode, while it was slow, it also still helped it to have that little bit of silence to kind of think about what you just saw. Mm-hmm. The guy shitting himself would not be as funny if right after we saw like someone making weird faces or something. You know, it goes to Felix like kind of just watching a cartoon, and you get a minute to be like, that guy just actually shit himself. He shit his pants.
It's like the pause afterwards for you to just contemplate what you just witnessed. I would give this episode a 9 if, and I know I keep hammering on about this, if it weren't for the really obvious ADR. The ADR kind of took me out a little bit, because it's like, come on, his mouth isn't even moving. It's just... But yeah, if it weren't for the ADR, I'd probably give it a 9, but I think I'm with you. I'd give it an 8. It's still a really strong episode.
Both of these have been super solid.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed these. I'm really looking forward to the rest of this series. The rest of Season 1 is going to be more or less like this, but then once we eventually get to Season 2, it's going to go in like a drastically different direction, because apparently that's when Don Oriolo really kind of cracked the whip and insisted that, okay, no, Felix has to talk all the time. The magic bag needs to be in like every episode.
Oh, so it drastically changes.
From what I've heard, and I have seen a bit of Season 2, and I really enjoyed what I saw, but it is definitely tonally different. There's a lot less, like, visual gags. It's a lot more talky humor.
Oh. It's a lot more, like, setup jokes than look at this funny thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Like I said in the first episode, I saw bits and pieces of this back in the day, and I've watched a couple episodes since then, just on YouTube. But this is my first time, sitting down and just watching through the whole series.
Yeah. I've never seen this series before. I've only seen a couple episodes of the 60s cartoon. So this is, like, a little bit of familiar and also a little bit of, like, new,
Yeah. So that was episode 3 of Animation Rotation. do you have any closing thoughts?
I don't think so.
No, me neither. I think I more or less said everything I wanted to say. This episode wound up being a little briefer than the previous ones, but that's alright. Not every episode needs to be a, hour-long analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess we can put some plugs. You can find me at VVorp at twitter.com.
And you can find me at I'm an Eaglet at twitter.com.
And again, I must say, do not follow us if you are under 18, because we do share some decidedly adult stuff.
Draw it.
Oh, and speaking of adult stuff, I can't believe this skipped my mind, but just the other day, Milton Knight shared on his Twitter, he shared like an early version of the Twisted Tales of Felix title cards, and inexplicably it had like Felix on the right, and then like this attractive human woman on the left.
Oh?
Just like this realistically proportioned, scantily clad human woman, and it's like, whoa, what? It's very well drawn, it's very cute, but it's like, what does it have to do with Felix?
It might be like a Sonic the Hedgehog situation. You know how when Sonic was first created, he had a love interest that was just a human woman?
That's true. Yeah, Madonna, I think they called her.
Mm-hmm.
There is a, long-standing tradition of funny cartoon animal with attractive human girlfriend, like, obviously Roger Rabbit, or you got Betty Boop and Bimbo.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's really interesting. You can find a lot of like cool behind-the-scenes production stuff on Milton Knight's Twitter, so please do give him a follow. So we will be back next time with episode 4, where we will be covering episode 1 of Code Lyoko.
Yeah, isn't that weird that we're on episode 1 of Code Lyoko because there was a prequel episode?
Yeah, last time we did the prequel 2-parter. So if you all would like to watch along with us, as we said last time, all of the episodes of both Code Lyoko and Felix are available on YouTube. So you can watch along with us if you feel so inclined, and we will see you next time.
See you later.
Bye-bye.